Good day, Brittle Planet listeners. This is Eric Peterson, almost out of quarantine here in Salt Lake City today. And today, my guest is the host of the podcast Hellbent for Metal, Mr. Tom Dare. How are you doing today, Tom?
I'm very good. Thank you, Eric. How are you doing? It's lovely to be on.
I'm great. Where are you joining us from today?
I'm joining us from just outside of Cambridge in England.
Oh, okay. So it's night there.
It's night there, yeah.
Yes. So I just wanted to start this by saying I wanted to do this interview because we have a mutual friend, and I saw a story that had been published in Krang magazine by you, as authored by you. It's called, We Need to Talk About Metal's Online Homophobia Problem. And immediately I saw that, and it really bugged me that in 2021, we still need to have this discussion. So I wanted to get your idea of how this article came about for you and what inspired you to write it.
So I do a podcast which is specifically looking at heavy metal from the point of view of the LGBT community. So it's presented by me and another member of the LGBT community, Matt Rushton. We look at it from our perspective, and most of it's positive stuff, or it's just kind of, well, we see this thing slightly differently because kind of thing. We don't really talk about the bad stuff or focus on that. We kind of always hoped, well, let's hope we never have to talk about anything like that. But then we saw there was a story on Blabbermouth about Roddy Bottom from Faith No More's side project with his partner, which is called Man on Man. And it was the story had a photo embedded in it, which was quite a tame picture of one of them kissing the other on the cheek. It's not really anything that provocative. And the comment section was just horrendous, really kind of naked homophobia, which was not even slightly subtle. The Twitter reactions were all it was a lot of people doing vomit gifs and vomit emojis.
Oh, okay.
And we kind of saw that and we went, oh, no, not again.
Yeah.
It's kind of predictable that it was going to happen, but it's to see that kind of stuff is really horrible. And we had almost immediately kind of messaged each other and went, we've got to talk about this, right? We can't see it and ignore it. We can't pretend it's not there. If we don't talk about this stuff, no one else is going to. So we did an episode where we basically threw out all of the stuff that we would normally talk about and went, we need to talk about this. We're going to do kind of a bit at the end where we talk about some music, but basically we just need to talk about this kind of stuff because it's really common, and we've all spent most of our lives, and Matt's younger than me, so he's seen almost all of his life knowing that he was queer, looking at this. And the same for me. It was you see this stuff so often that it you sometimes forget it's there, and then you see it again and you go, oh God, not this again, because it feels like it's all the time.
Yeah.
So we did that episode, and then my friend and former colleague, Luke Morton, the web editor, said, dude, we got to do something about this, right? Let's see do you want to write something about why you did that? Because something's got to be said. To which I said, yes, of course I want to. We didn't do that episode because we wanted to hide away from it. We wanted to make sure that this stuff is kind of seen. And so that was how that came about, and it happened very quickly. And the reactions kind of came in a number of different ways, which was kind of strange.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, there was some of it that was entirely predictable. And there were an awful lot of people who I know are kind of on my side who went, yeah, great, that's a really important thing to say. I'm really supportive. And that was fantastic. And kind of seeing lots of people say, yeah, this is unacceptable. We're really sorry you've had to see this. We need to do something about it. And thank you for writing it. That's lovely. Of course it is. But there were an awful lot of people who also went, yeah, this doesn't exist.
Huh.
You're talking about nothing. There's not really a problem there. Or other people went, well, if it's there, but you've kind of gone looking for it, haven't you? It's not really that bad, is it? What you're talking about is kind of a few things, and it's not really that big a deal, and it's not a lot of it. And then a load of people just went, "Fuck you, we hate gay people."
Yeah,
which kind of happens.
Yeah, which is too bad. Because for me, I know, and being a lifelong metal fan, that metal is made up of misfits.
Yeah,
we didn't fit in somehow, and that is what drew us to metal. No matter, and so for me, I grew up in the '80s, and growing up in the '80s, it just seems funny to me that Poison released "Look What the Cat Dragged In," and if you didn't know any better, you'd think they were girls, and nobody cared. And nobody cared. But now all of a sudden they see a couple guys having a kiss together, and they think it's the grossest thing ever.
Yeah, and there was in the film Metal Headbanger's Journey, right, which is a great film.
Yeah,
I think someone actually says that someone who was on the Sunset Strip in the '80s says people, there were dudes who walked around talking about how they want to fuck chicks and Poison, right?
Yeah,
and people were genuinely going, "Oh, that's hot." But and it's kind of something that we know is there. We know there are loads of people who just see it and go ick, and that's kind of just seeing it and going ick is kind of something you go, well, you can't really help that. It's an instinctive reaction. Going from that's ick to fuck you, we hate you is kind of the point. It becomes a problem. Or saying, not even if it's not fuck you, we hate you, it's just, oh, well, please don't do that. We don't want to see that.
Yes.
If we turned around and said we don't want to see straight couples kissing, people would be outraged.
Yes.
So why is it different the other way around?
Yes. I do have to say, and I don't condone it, this doesn't defend what Blabbermouth did, but I don't feel like Blabbermouth, people that respond on Blabbermouth, are indicative of true metalheads or 100%. And I think you and I have had a little bit of this discussion. I feel like, to me, a lot of people on Blabbermouth are trolls, period.
To an extent, but I think I've had enough of that in person.
Yeah.
Or at least not that, maybe not kind of, no, I have seen some of the worst stuff. I've heard enough of it in person, and I know enough people who've had the same experience that, although I don't think it represents all of metal at all, it definitely doesn't. It's still there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, if 95% of us is great, but 5% of us are homophobic and they're going to say something, that's too many. Now, I don't have any idea what the number actually is, but the frequency with which I see stuff like this, just in general, makes me think it may not be kind of, it's not the whole community. Of course it isn't, but it's there, and it's enough people that it's a problem.
Yes. So anybody, if it's anybody, it's a problem. And to me, if somebody that says they like metal is acting in this way, they're not a true metalhead.
I don't know about that. Because what's the kind of test of a true metalhead? Is it just that they, if they say, well, I'll accept Rob Halford but no one else, or I'll accept Rob Halford and Roddy Bottom but no one else? It's really easy for us to say they're not really true metalheads, but I think the uncomfortable thing is that they are part of the community, and that we can't just kind of say, well, they need to leave, because we're never going to be able to tell who's who, right? We can't just kind of say, well, you're gone now, and that solves the problem. What we need to kind of do is to try and help those people see, this is not an okay thing to behave, right? Sure. It's what you feel in your heart is your business, but behaving this way towards other people and writing these comments in places where other people can see them, that has harm, right? That causes people real distress, and that causes people to feel like they're not welcome.
That's a very
and
good
I
point.
think I would much rather kind of try and communicate that with people like this than I would try and say, well, be gone, you're not really part of the community.
Okay.
I don't think that's I'd much rather be kind of try and get, I'm kind of an old hippie, really.
Yeah.
Like, as much as I like really brutal metal, I love black metal and grindcore. At the same time, I'd much rather kind of everyone kind of comes together and works out their problems and kind of realizes why we're all kind of all right, really. We just need to fix our problems. I'm not a punch Nazis dude.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm hearing you say is you want it to be more inclusive than exclusive.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly. Here's the thing. There's this phrase cancel culture gets tossed around, right? Yeah. I'm not interested in cancelling anyone. I've got no interest in people kind of being permanently excluded from communities. I think obviously places need to have a moderation system. So if you're commenting on the internet on someone's Facebook page, they've got every right to say, well, we don't want that here, please leave. But I'm not about getting kind of casting people out of the metal community. I'd much rather we get together and work out what's the best way for us all to kind of get along at the very least, rather than say, be gone, homophobes, and never return. Because that's not going to do anything. They're just going to go off and have homophobic kids, and they're going to be, if they're metal fans, they'll come into the scene and the same thing will happen.
I agree with what you're saying, and I think what the important part is to actually see these people as people, which in then that turn makes it something completely different rather than seeing it as a picture. If you see it as an individual and you get to know that individual, you realize that they're just like you.
Yeah,
you know,
and that's how gay rights have moved, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
is
exactly.
that the thing that was revolutionary for the gay rights movement was people being out. It wasn't actually it wasn't legal changes that made people change. It was people changed and then the legal changes followed. So what happened was that when gay people started being out a lot, there were a load of parents who were homophobic who suddenly realized, hang on, that thing I've always believed about gay people is not true about my son or my daughter. Well, does that mean it's just not true?
Yeah.
And people who saw other people being homophobic towards their kids and in the past would probably have got away. They've just kind of said, yeah, I kind of agree with that. When it's directed at their kids, they suddenly go, no, don't do that. That's my kid. Yeah. And that's because what happened is that gay people come from straight people, and straight people love their children. Yeah. And so as much as there are kind of horror stories about people getting rejected by their parents, ultimately what moved the goalposts and that made it possible for us to actually have progress in this stuff was by people realizing, hang on, that's, maybe something I thought was true was not.
So being a gay man and a metalhead, what are some of the things that you see that me being a straight guy might not see that bothers you?
I mean, it's the things that there are plenty of things that we both notice, right? A lot of it we would both kind of go, obviously we don't think that's okay. Yeah. I think some of the more subtle things are people using like words like gay is just a negative, or just saying, oh, that's really gay, I don't like it. Yeah. Not because it actually involves two dudes shagging or anything, but just because they think it's not very good. And that's the kind of softer stuff that it's homophobic, but I certainly wouldn't want anyone kind of banned from the internet for saying it. I'd kind of want to have a conversation with them and be like, you're talking about me, right? So there's that kind of stuff. And things like, I really don't like people using words like cocksucker. I think that's kind of that's like if the gay community used the word fanny muncher as an insult for straight dudes, straight dudes would be up in arms and say you can't say that. It's a horror. Well, it's completely normal, of course, and so we go, well, why do it to us? So that's there's things like that. I mean, I think a lot of it is more to do with kind of language that makes it clear that to be straight is just normal and that there's no other way, right?
Yeah.
It's not someone saying, and what I want to be very clear. This is not saying that you can't talk about. You can't have a love song which is a band sing about a woman or a woman sing about a man, and because that's homophobic or stuff like that. It's subtle pieces of language which basically say you're not normal, right? And just saying, oh, everyone's got all men love boobs, right? Like that's something I've heard at festivals and people making jokes about how all guys are basically after chicks. And I'm there in the corner going, I'm not.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not. I've got no interest in that at all. That's really boring. Can we talk about something else, please? It's like, it would be like me trying to talk to you about cricket, right? You would have absolutely no idea what I was saying.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of thing. So it's a lot of the things that you wouldn't notice that I would are relatively subtle.
Okay.
Whereas there's an awful lot of stuff that we both just see and go, well, that's obviously bad.
Yeah. So so when you go to a show, do you feel comfortable at a metal show, or do you still have to change yourself to fit a mold so you feel accepted?
Changes really significantly on what kind of show it is, who I'm with, and how many people I know that are there.
Okay.
So if I'm at a show in the bit of North London where I spent most of my my adolescent and years of my 20s going to gigs all the time with 15 people who know me really well, then I wouldn't bother.
Okay.
And I've certainly and there are certain bands where I've just been to and it's been made so clear that it's kind of it's a place where we accept gay people here. So Trivium have done that. Do you know Skindred? They're a band, really big deal here. Not so sure how big they're in the States, but they've kind of made it clear that their music is for everyone, whether you're black or white, you're gay or straight, and various other things as well. So things like that, you kind of feel, oh well, that's fine. And there are also shows I've been to where it's so obvious there's loads of same-sex couples around that you just go, oh, it's fine, it's a safe place. There are an awful lot of shows where if I'm there with my partner, we're not going to be holding hands at any point. Okay. And we just go, no, I'm not so sure this is safe. Death metal shows are bad for that. I hate to say it. Black metal shows are pretty bad for that. And kind of big shows where you don't know that many people, where it's very dark, and you're very aware if someone wanted to come up to me and punch me in the back of the head, they would do it before I knew what had happened. Yeah. Yeah, I do have to be a bit more discreet. I do feel that there are shows where I just feel I don't think this is a particularly safe place, and I think if the chances that there's that one arsehole, right? There's that one guy who's really going to react badly seeing two dudes holding hands. Yeah, we do restrain that, and we do kind of. I certainly have been to shows where I go, my kind of hand gestures are going to be a lot less limp-wristed than normal. Yeah. Yeah, and that's sad. I feel like for me, I don't like to categorize people, but I feel like there's a certain group of people out there that feel like their masculinity is challenged because they think that
a gay guy is going to try to convert them at a show, and that's the last thing that any gay guy goes to a show that they want to hear the music, and and it's the same. It's the same thing.
We've got no idea in recruit. We've got no interest in recruiting, right?
Yeah.
Like we want other gay guys. We're not interested in kind of straight dudes who aren't really into it.
And the other funny part is I feel like it's like this guy, this macho dream to like, I'm going to find these lesbians and I'm going to convert them and I'm going to be the hero, and it's just this funny thing. It comes down to this macho mentality where we're just at a show to see music and be together and listen to music, not to pick up on things.
Yeah. And like if you want to hit on dudes, a metal show is a bad place, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Although, actually, I will say I have been to metal shows and turned Grindr on, back when I was single anyway, and turned Grindr on and suddenly seen that there's quite a few of us. So okay. I know we're there.
Yeah.
But if you were going to try and pick someone up, then it would be, it's fucking metal show. It's loud, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to be able to hear each other. You're not going to go up to someone and be like, "Hi, can I get you a drink?" Well,
exactly.
Fucking Testament are on stage. You're not going to hear them.
So I feel like it's a thing that I think mostly guys need to get past this, that somebody's going to try to take their masculinity and we're all there to enjoy a show. So just go there and enjoy the show and don't worry about anybody else.
I think there are, I know this because I know people who are allies who are not homophobic at all, who will freely admit, no, I do find the idea of two dudes kissing, it's not an idea I like, right? It's an idea they just go, yeah. But they also know, yeah, but that doesn't mean anything, right? True. That just means I think, yeah. It doesn't mean that they're bad or that they should kind of have their rights taken away or that they're a threat to me. It's just I don't want to get involved.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing, I'm not sure, I have no idea if anyone can do anything about it. What you can do is what my friends have done, which is to say, it doesn't mean anything. Just the fact that I go, yeah, it doesn't actually mean anything at all. And they kind of realize that that's not something to act upon. They just go, yeah, I'm just going to go over here and do my thing. It's fine.
Yeah. So tell me the kind of music you like and the kind of music you're drawn to. And I'm just curious as why you're drawn to it.
It's quite a lot of metal, really. I define myself as a metal fan. I don't define myself as kind of a death metal fan or a black metal fan or anything else. The two things that I listen, or the three things that I spend most of my time going out and looking for are black metal, because I love black metal enormously. Like, black metal is the one bit of metal where I went, well, if I could only live in one, that's the thing that does the most different things within it, and it'd probably be that. And the other two are power metal and folk metal, and they're all tapping into completely different things.
Mm-hmm.
So, like with black metal, I love the fact that something can do something that is incredibly ferocious and evil and aggressive, and at the same time be really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
That you can just get these kind of searing riffs and have this kind of soaring lead guitar line over the top that really kind of brings things together, and it can just kind of make you feel in things that nothing else can. Like, it can make you feel absolutely terrified and like you're going to die, but at the same time more alive than you've ever felt. And it's the most it's the thing that I find most exhilarating. But then at the same time, you've got I really love totally over the top, really forceful power metal. So I love Rhapsody of Fire. I love Blind Guardian. I love Sabaton. I love Powerwolf. I love particularly when they're at the best. I love Sonata Arctica. All that kind of stuff. I absolutely love. I think it's amazing. And it's it does that thing that, like, the first time you hear Maiden and you go, wow, that makes me feel 10 feet tall.
Yeah.
Power metal says, we're not going to make you feel 10 feet tall. We're going to make you feel 100 feet tall, because we're going to just take everything they did and make it bigger. Yeah. And I love I love how over the top it is. And folk metal is just kind of, hey, we want to have a party, and we want it to be kind of, we want you to have little bits of music that are incredibly recognizable because they're really simple, because that's what folk music is designed to do. And then we're going to weave it into heavy metal and see what happens. And the number of different ways people can interpret that, I just find absolutely amazing. So those are the three things that I spend most of my time listening to. But I think that's also because they're the three things which are they're the hardest to find. Like if you don't go looking for it, you will never hear it.
Yeah.
The amount of death metal that I just have served up to me in my lap, where I just go, well, I didn't even know I was looking for that, but thank you, that's great. And the same thing goes with like I don't need to go looking for the new Trivium album or the new Architects record or anything like that that's new. That because I'm going to hear that, I'm going to find that.
Yeah.
But I kind of, I don't know, I tend to lurk slightly more in the nastier bit of metal, but it's not specifically. So, I spent as much time listening to the Trivium album from last year as I did listening to the Anona Thrak album from last year.
Okay. So the cool thing to me about folk metal is you're introduced to instruments you didn't even know existed. I mean, you start listening to the and you go, what the hell instrument is that? And then you see it and you go, I didn't even know that was an instrument.
Yeah. Yeah. And you also you start hearing sounds that you didn't know existed.
Exactly.
So you hear the kind of, like, I love Orphaned Land, right? I think that band's amazing. And they're kind of their incorporation of both Middle Eastern and Jewish folk music into their sound. I think that's like a bunch of that stuff is stuff that I probably wouldn't have heard otherwise, because I'm from, completely the wrong part of the world to stumble into it. Yeah. And you hear people you hear stuff like Korpiklani doing throat singing occasionally, or you hear a band like Thonic who use that Taiwanese cello. You just go, oh, that's amazing, that's beautiful. I would just never have known this was possible without you.
Nice. So going back to your podcast real quick, I just wanted to touch on what kind of subjects are you got upcoming for your podcast, and what are you going to be talking about? So
we've got quite a lot of different things. We're kind of the thing that we try and do every week is that we have something called a Camp Classic, which is where we've basically taken a song. It's usually a song, but I think next week it's going to be an album where we say why this spoke to us from a specifically LGBT perspective. Uh-huh. So the kind of the first one, the kind of thing that made me come up with the idea was He Is by Ghost, because I heard that and went, the first time I ever heard it, I couldn't quite work out what he was saying, and I went, hang on, that sounds like a gay love song. It's like this kind of vaguely romantic, loving thing. Okay. With a chorus of He Is, clearly sung by a man, and kind of for a split second forgot that it was to Satan. Oh, it's Ghost, isn't it? He's singing about the devil. Yeah. And kind of went, oh, that's really cute. That sounds like a gay love song. I don't really hear them very much. Oh, hang on, no, that's not what it is at all. So we do one of those every week. So the episode that we've just recorded that will be out by the time this interview goes up. We've spoken about an Anona Thrak song, which is why I brought them up. Okay. And we also kind of look at things like times someone in heavy metal, where usually a band have kind of stood up and done something which says we're on the side of the LGBT community. Okay. And it's kind of the one that inspired it is a Trivium song called from the Crusade called And Sadness Will See Her, which is about the murder of Matthew Shepard. So we talk about why that's kind of important for us and why that was a big deal for us. And we also try and get people on from the LGBT community. Kind of the phrase I use is, we want to talk to people who make metal happen. Uh-huh. So it's obviously going to be mostly musicians, but it's also, if producers want to come on, or people who work in management or work in PR or who sell merch for bands or who roadie for bands or anything that actually helps the music to exist.
Okay.
Who is part of the LGBT community, we try and talk to. So the next one of those we've got coming out is the singer and guitarist in a really brilliant new British band called Pupil Slicer, who's a member of the LGBT community, and we're there's an awful lot of themes from that within their songs. So we're going to be talking to her about those kind of things, and that's the general thing we do. And we've got some stuff coming up which is a little bit different. So we're hoping soon that we're going to be doing a bunch of new features, which I'm not quite ready to talk about yet. But it's mostly talking about things in metal that we just see a little bit differently.
Yeah,
that you don't know exist. So one of the things we spoke about recently was, like, you remember back in the 90s when Metallica did Reload and everyone said, "Oh, that looks a bit gay."
Yeah.
Well, we looked at it and went, "Yeah, it does look a bit gay. Isn't that great?" And kind of just saying, "Well, yes, it does, but in a good way."
Yeah.
And we look at that and think, yeah, what Kirk's doing in that photo looks a little bit like something you'd actually see on a gay porn site. Just the kind of the photos that you get before you give them your credit card details, kind
exactly.
of thing. And we go, well, yeah, cool. We like that. We approve. So it's not. We're definitely not a kind of preach podcast. We don't really do issues. We just want to do two things. One is to say, look, this is our experience of heavy metal, and it might be a little bit different to yours. And you might hear us talk about something you know really well in the way you've never knew existed. And also just to allow people who exist in heavy metal who are from the LGBT community to kind of to speak up and have a voice and say, we're here too. We exist.
Who was one of your, you've been doing the podcast for about a year now? Or how long?
We started at the start of November, so we're still relatively new.
Relatively new. Okay, so have you had any interviews in the music industry that have really stood out to you?
There's kind of two or three. The guest we got on who we just thought, like when we started, we kind of drew up a list of our dream interviews, and like in our top 5 was Mina Caputo, obviously, and then about 7 episodes in, we had Mina Caputo on the show.
Nice.
So that was incredible because genuine heavy metal legend.
Yeah.
But I think the interview that stands out most for me was Ash O'Hara, who used to be in a band called Tesseract.
Okay.
Who did they're a British band, but they did a tour which took in Russia, which of course is not a very safe place to be gay at all. And they've got this law that says if you promote homosexuality, you can be arrested, you can be sent to prison. And they also have an awful lot of kind of extrajudicial stuff where they will essentially torture gay men and sometimes torture gay men to death. And he had an experience with someone coming up to him after a show and saying, "So you're gay, right?" And he just went, "Is this someone who's coming out to me and saying, oh, thank you, it really helps me to know there are people like me out there? Or is this someone who's trying to get me arrested by saying, you're gay, right? Oh, you are? Well, then you're promoting homosexuality. Here I'm arresting you." And so he just had to go, nope. And, having been out of the closet for 10, 15 years, he suddenly had to go, nope, I'm back. I'm going right back in there. I'm not gay. And just was desperately worried that they weren't going to get out the country safely. And so that's his story of what it's like to be in heavy metal is also the one that I identified the most with, where I went, he's saying things that sound like my experience of the same thing. So those were the two that I thought those are the ones that jump out.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, who is on your, let's just say, top 3 or 4 wish list for who you want to interview?
Obviously, number 1's Rob Halford.
Yeah.
Like if I said anyone else, everyone would know I was immediately lying, because of course it's Rob Halford. He's, frontman of Judas Priest. He's the metal god. He's his Instagram is one of the most kind of proud ones in heavy metal. So obviously he's number one.
And he's who you named your podcast after.
Yeah, of course. Of course we had to have a Judas Priest reference. Yeah. But it's also play on words because bent in the UK is a word for gay. So it's a pun as well. So we had to.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, obviously Roddy Bottom would be welcome on anytime he wants to come on. He'd be an obvious guest. We'd love Steve from Torch. I love Torch. I think he's great. So we'd love to get him on. There's a band called Vile Creature, who are more from the extreme end, who are both members of the LGBT community. It's a married couple who are the band, and we'd love to have either of them on. Really, I'd like to get both of them on and see what they, separately, and say, well, what's your perspective and what's your perspective?
Yeah.
Because you've gone through some of your life together, but some of it not. What have you? What's the same? What's different? And there's kind of a few others but those are the ones that from the top of my head jump out and say, yeah, we desperately love to talk to them. Oh, Garl, of course. Yeah. Garl, the black metal singer who I have met and has the deepest voice of anyone I've ever actually met in person.
Wow.
So we'd love to have him on because I mean I think some of the vocal performances he's given are just incredible, and he's an amazing frontman. So I'd love to talk to him both about music, and he's got a very unique take on gay rights. Yeah. In that he's spoken quite. I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but his take on what he wants is quite different to what I would want. So I'd love to give him a chance to kind of really articulate what he feels there.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you're 7-8 episodes into your podcast.
Episode 18 should 18? Be.
Okay,
should have gone live by the time this goes out.
So you're 18 episodes in, and it sounds like you're doing really good, and it sounds like your community and your following is growing. Correct?
Yeah, it's been really nice to see that that we are going up in terms of the numbers. I mean, Christmas is always a little bit funny, but basically, if you take that out, we've been kind of steadily growing, and it's been really nice that we had a run of episodes which were a little bit unusual, and it was kind of I was thinking, is that going to upset things? Is it going to lose momentum? And it didn't at all. If anything, we grew in the period that I was worried we might slide a bit, and we've continued to grow since. So it's been really nice seeing people come on board, and the number of queer metalers we've had in the last couple of weeks who've messaged us and said, I thank God, I'm so glad your podcast exists. I didn't know I needed this, but I did, and people from the LGBT community saying, this is kind of what I've always wanted this voiced in our community. And to hear that's amazing. Like, because I was thinking, 50 people listening. Yeah. You're right. This is just something I want to do. And to have people saying it's actually, like, it means something to them is kind of mind-blowing. And it's incredible when someone sends you a message like that and you just go, I don't even know what to say. Thank you.
That's an amazing thing to hear, just because I think it's your passion because I actually listened to it, and I think your passion for what you do, it's really electric, and I think it draws people in, which is what makes a good podcast a good podcast.
Oh, thank you. Well, I love metal, right? It's like this isn't the first thing that I've done. I've written for magazines. I edited a magazine for a while, and I wrote for websites as well. And I've done work, and I've also done a load of stuff where I just love this music, and it's that's a big part of what we do. We are mad passionate about metal, and that's the kind of the backbone of the podcast. If we didn't care about the music, we wouldn't be able to do any of the kind of stuff to do with the LGBT side. The music is the main thing.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're both kind of completely addicted to finding all the good music out there because we just need more of it because it's amazing and we can't get enough that's what drives us. That's why the podcast exists. It comes from a place of passion, not from a kind of it's not a soapbox. It's a come on, let's have a chat.
Yeah. And when you were talking about that, it struck me. We were talking about the Headbangers journey, and that quote from Rob Zombie in there, and he says, nobody ever said, you remember that one summer when we listened to Slayer? That was really cool. That was a fun summer. It's always the guy that has Slayer carved into his arm. That's how metalheads are. Yeah.
And it's, I have met the guy who's like into Incubus one summer. There's the bands who used to be in our world who kind of moved out of it, but like you don't have to get very far into metal and it becomes a bit addictive, right?
Yes.
Like you're just like the first time you hear Metallica and you're just like, oh my God, those riffs. And then you hear Slayer and you go, oh my God, that's so brutal. And then you kind of hear, I vividly remember hearing proper power metal for the first time and just going, oh my God, that's so ridiculous. I need more of this stuff. Yes. And it's kind of, you're always searching for that thing again. And the best bit is that you do find it if you try.
Exactly.
At least I do.
Oh, I do too.
I'm routinely stumbling. I find myself stumbling across this thing where I just go, oh God, this is amazing. So that's why the podcast happens, is because passionate people want to talk about it, and it's just we go, well, this is our perspective. It's a bit different,
and I think that's an amazing part because I don't. There's so many podcasts out there where people are, let's just talk metal, let's just talk about this. This is such a unique podcast that I think, gay or straight, it's an amazing podcast just to hear somebody else's perspective on metal.
I mean, hopefully that's what it sounds like, right? That's the aim. We never wanted it to be a podcast for the gays.
Yeah,
like, that's not the idea. It's like, no, this is a podcast for people who like metal, and
exactly.
That's the thing that is that it's for is for offering you a perspective on something you like that you perhaps didn't know about.
Yeah,
and for the LGBT community, there'll be a load of people who will listen to it and go, "Oh, I hadn't thought about that either," and will have a very different take to me, and that's cool, right?
Yeah.
That's like the fact that we all love this thing, but we all have slightly different views on, even the same thing. Like if you ask 100 Iron Maiden fans for their favorite Iron Maiden song, you'll probably get about 95 answers.
Exactly.
Right? There'll be like 3 people who'll pick Number of the Beast and 2 people who'll pick Hallowed Be Thy Name, and then everyone else will give you different ideas. And like that's why going to festivals and meeting new people and going to gigs and meeting new people and talking to people on the internet is cool because we've got this thing that we all love, but we think about differently, and that's great.
Yeah. So on that subject, favorite Iron Maiden song?
For me, it's Hallowed Be the Name. Okay. I picked that one on purpose. But strangely, I was really lucky really early when I was writing about music for magazines for a while. I was really lucky to get to go and see Iron Maiden do one of their Final Frontier shows, and I liked that album before the show, and then I went to see that show, and they did When the Wild Wind Blows, which was the last song on that record, and I went, I hadn't realized how brilliant this is, because you put that song alongside Can I Play with Madness, and it's as good. Yes. And so that kind of revelation that they've been around 30 years and they've done this song which I thought was as good as almost everything they've ever done, actually means that song now has a really special place in my heart, because I went, that's kind of my era Iron Maiden song.
Okay.
It's not something that happened. It's not something that I was kind of too young to enjoy when it came out the first time. Yeah. Just like I think Number of the Beast came out like I was possibly not born. I can't remember. I think Power Slave came out when I was like 2 months old. Yeah. So obviously I wasn't listening to any of those songs.
Yeah.
But for something to come out in my time and me to go, actually, I like this as much as all the others, means that song actually has a real special place in my heart. As well, all the classics do too.
Exactly.
But it's just there's a special feeling when you hear someone that you love to do something that's new, and you go, that's kind of my one.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of that special thing that that it's your relationship with it. It's not just about the best.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Tom, I appreciate your time, and it's been amazing talking to you. And I just want to encourage everybody to go check out your guys' podcast, Hellbent for Metal. And where can they hear it at?
So you can. The easiest way is probably to find us either on one of our social media accounts. We've got links to episodes and our website there. So we're on Twitter, where we're HBFM Pod. We're on Facebook, where we're facebook.com/Hellbent for Metal Pod, and Instagram is the same. And our website, if you just want to go straight there, is hellbentformetal.podbean.com. But if you just go to your favorite podcast app and search Hellbent for Metal, we'll be on there. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, all of those things.
Great. Well, I encourage everybody to go check it out, because it's a cool podcast, like I said, to get a different perspective on something that you already love. So
thank you so much, Eric. You've been so kind.
Yes, and we'll chat soon, and I appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you for having me on. Pleasure.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate that.